I have a question both for Anjan and Anri. Both of you studied painting originally and came to film more out of a necessity than that it was an obvious choice. With you also, Anna, you just picked up a camera and never having made film before, and you actually also how did the interest in film come? I mean, how did it go? Yeah.
No, I mean, it was not a decision to make a film. Of course, I left Albania and I went in Italy and I was interested in art, and I did only painting before. And of course, I was interested to see what was happening with art, because I mean, Albania was a close country, and the information on contemporary art was very limited. And then, of course, I discovered that it's video art showing, blah blah blah. But it was not this the interest of me when I started to use video. It was just because I heard in my daughter telling these stories to her toys, and I realized that I cannot photograph, I cannot paint these stories, I can just film them. You know? So then I discovered this possibility that this medium has, and I started just to use it. So it was not in kind of, you know, going from painting to video like kind of decision, like artistic decision, but it was kind of me. And then I kept on doing videos more or less with this spirit.
And there were more autobiographical stories at first, right?
The first were mostly autobiographical. But I mean, I'm not interested in autobiography, I'm not interested in telling my story or my daughter's story, but I was like interested to see how in reality it's quite close to me, even in my life. I mean, something where some more wide questions were like coming out. I mean, in Albanian stories, I was very, very interested how, I mean, these dramatic stories, this dramatic experience can be told through my daughter in a very light and fantastic and, you know, very creative way, actually. Or in this video that I showed with the policeman, it's not only about my story there, but it's how an artist, when it's out of the context that recognized him as an artist, can be perceived. How can he deal with the reality that is not like treating him like, you know, artist, but, you know, just even with the doubt that it's somebody who abused or who is a kind of criminal or whatever. You know. So I was interested to see how in my story or in my daughter's experience or with my relatives, so some more wide questions are coming up. So it's not about autobiography.
It came a bit gradually. It's not like one day I jumped from the last painting to the first video, but now when I think back, I think things were very accelerated, the events in the country in terms of socially, politically, and there was a point where I lost the interest in negotiating all this through a single image, and I became very interested in the process, and I think at that time and still now, video or film serves this desire of mine better. So that was mainly. I also lost interest in this very personal way of how you identify yourself with the painting, this moment of gesture. And I really, there was a point where I wasn't interested in finding my gesture. I was more interested in, or I was rather interested in finding my gesture in terms of how I negotiate with things and with people rather than negotiating with the frame.
And Sislej, your work often relates in a paradoxical way to identity, globalization, migration, the idea of the other, like xenophobia. How does that relate to your own experiences, an immigrant, your own experiences?
Well, I can say that I today feel like I'm from Utrecht. So that I feel. Well, I think it's very complex and it's an issue, and I think it's very personal. But I truly believe that the identity itself is something that we have and we share between us. But sometimes in certain countries it's a question of sovereignty that we have to question. Now, my personal relation between this old phenomenon, these old thousands and thousands of years, it is just something that I personally feel is responsible to question. Because I think me, as being part of any society, is to question the backbone of ambiguity, me in a social context, and therefore it's social responsibility. Now, using the art, maybe we have as a gift that we can highlight a different level. But I think it's very important that we both, with others, share experience. So it's a relative way how you feel identity, or the way it may be question maybe to you how you feel being part of identity of Dutch society, maybe being as German, being me. It is always questionable. Now.
I was also thinking about something that we spoke about yesterday, that you said that the radical political situation that you experienced was actually, you could also say, see in a positive way, that you didn't see yourself as a victim, but that you could also use it maybe also as a creative force. Could you elaborate on that?
First, I believe that everybody of us have certain experience that is very rich, and bad and good. As me, as Anri, as Adrian, coming from different societies that we pass through experience, and I think bad and good, it's always experience. So how can we transform that experience into something that can go beyond of any static situation, or maybe melancholic or nostalgic or romantic? It is to question and to fight again fight in an intellectual way. And that is a rich part that I should not abuse, but I should use as something that going beyond all that context what I was born and raised. Because I believe, even today where I live in New York, I choose New York because of contradictions in New York. I love New York, but at the same time I hate New York. And it's not that there's everything flower and roses, but you have certain injustice there too, but they have great values too. And I think it's both, and like in Utrecht too, you have great things and you have negative things. So it's, I think, depends to the...
And how do you use it?
Well, I try to use my language of art to highlight that my personal experience towards a certain so-called question that I feel that I should highlight it. And that is my question, what I respond. Because if I will know the response of that question, I will never do the art, because I will have already a solution. But since I don't know, I cannot rationalize that. It's instinctive.
And for example, with the Albanian pavilion that you made in the last Venice Biennale?
Well, first of all, I think the Biennale of Venice is a political approach rather than artistic. We should define that. How can important be the young British artist acceptable in this system of art and be welcome And when we talk about so-called Moroccan art, it has always become folkloric. How can we question this kind of underdeveloped countries and always what is already developed in many countries is always welcome, like Biennale Venice? First of all, I accept that responsibility towards that project. It was because to me, identities already who have pavilions long time ago that should question themselves, should leave the pavilions for others. Like example, I would love if the France will leave the pavilion for, let's say, India, or maybe some other pavilions, Belgian pavilions for Nigeria. So we should really question that. So I choose to have as a participant of Albanian pavilion to question architecture itself. So it's at the same time it was to highlight that political aspect, what quality of not nationality should not take as an advantage, what is an priority, but should be taken as a quality of the artist and personality, rather than to be hidden a stereotype of anything that can at least be known and highlight. So that was, I have a very clear idea in regards to that. And that task was something that I choose and accept because I really wanted to do it.
I'm interested in this relation to the between language and music, and I'm also interested in the point where when music can be like a substitute for language. And in the last project on Sorrow, it was like I asked this person to be in a very difficult physical situation and to improvise with the city. And what was interesting for me in this free jazz thing, because it starts to go around its theme and starts to get fucked up, so at some point you're never sure when it stops being the music. But where it's interesting for me, the music, is because it resists meaning. So it approaches meaning in a different way than language does. And in general, since with Intervista, with this film where, with my mother, I've developed a sort of distrust in language, and also an interest in the language, but exactly when it breaks, like when it doesn't serve or when it fails. So this is my relation between a possible relation that interests me between language and music. And in terms of music, I think the interest I had, it's been gradual. Like in the beginning, there was the first 2 times I really worked with music, the musicians were not really protagonists. So once was with Mixed Behavior, which is a DJ mixing with the sky during the night. But then later in the more recent projects like this one and another one, so Now I See, which I worked with musicians from Reykjavik, from Iceland, they are really protagonists in the film. So in Long Sorrow, I really worked with, before I decided to work with Jamil Munok, who's a free jazz saxophone player from New York, I really went through listening many CDs of other people and I contacted their labels. But I found in him this really gift. He had to really improvise with the thing, because by having this complicated or complex situation like him being hanged up in 70 meters high, I really wanted somebody for whom free jazz is not a style, not somebody who can pretend improvisation, but somebody who really improvises. Because that's why I wanted to push it in this difficult situation when he would not only use music like as trying to deal with his life and emptiness, like people use music or I use art, for example, or visual art, but also to deal with the void, because he was really hanging with the void. So that's why. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah,
that's how things come together.
How did you do that, by the way? Because there's no evidence in the film at all, from the beginning to the end of the...
It's by a German law, it meant a double security, which is like two independent system of hanging him and securing him, and we had three, which was one was mainly he was hanged here and screwed on something which was screwed on the facade. And another one was going behind him and going on the roof. And the third one was a third person who was connected to him, but he was staying just off the frame of the image. So at any point that there would be a problem, he could jump on him. And that was very important. it's technical, but it's
Yeah.
when you are
But
in,
interesting.
but when you are in a very difficult situation like that, even if you studied many years in school, even if you believe in techniques and in the reason and all this, there is a point where you don't trust it anymore. So for him, the most secure thing was being connected to somebody else, which was interesting because the safest thing wasn't to somebody else, it was doing the thing. But for me, it was very important to really. Normally, in a cinema approach, I really worked like with 16mm, super 16mm film, and there was a real crew, and the whole process was very much cinema-like. But for me, it was very important to create an event and then film the event, document the event, and then make out of it a film, which is not anymore the documentation of the event. Because in the cinema, it would be like I would shoot it on the second floor and make it look like the 20th floor. But for me, because you don't go for you go for the more reasonable, because what is important is the result. And for me, at the same time, what is important is and the result, but also the process. So that's why it was very important to be on so high.
I actually had a very cliche question, but I think it's provoked by the situation that you're united here as being Albanian artists under one label. I was wondering in which sense the three of you were still connected to the Albanian art context, and whether you could, I already said it's a cliche, so be prepared for it. You could maybe explain like the current, let's not say lethargy in the younger Albanian art scene, or there doesn't seem to be so much of a dynamic, or maybe they're not sort of identifiable protagonists from an outsider perspective. I was wondering if your own productivity, and I really generalize it into almost a stereotype, had anything to do, to go back to Daniela's subject, with a sort of moment of historical rupture, and that you were actually starting to develop your art practice within a moment of personal transit, but also sort of more general transit of society at large. Do you think that's related at all, or is that just speculation? And
I think the cliche could be worse. You could start calling us AYA. And I just say something very short. I think it depends on who are the younger people that we are targeting in this discussion. It's somehow related with the generation. I think for me it's been very important, although it can be hurting, it's been very important to have real ruptures in my life, which are not only ruptures of value, but also moments when you feel lost, but not you individually lost, but also lost together with the others. And this has happened several times, but like the biggest time was in the 90s when the values, the system changed everything. Now, the generation which are younger than us, and I'm not talking only about the artists, I'm talking about, without separating artists and not artists, and I discuss this very often with friends of mine, being born later, they belong less to the moment of the rupture and more to the period of the transition. So there is less memory of the rupture itself. And this also explains partly maybe your question, having mainly they've been living afterwards. So the mix between before and later, it's not the same alchemy anymore. So that's my opinion on that. But then it's also a question of individuals. And also it's a question of, it mirrors also a situation which becomes less and less political, although it's highly political, but not in that way anymore. Because people want things to make sense again, they don't want to feel lost again. That's one of the ways to attach yourself to things which make sense is maybe not to be an artist.
Yeah, I agree that defining about this moment. I mean, 90s has been very important for Albania, for us to live in that experience, and actually we kind of had this big hope of change, and then we experienced a kind of, it was the first delusion, because when Albania changed, it was not what we actually expected. And then we left and we went in the West, and we had a kind of idea of the West, and so we experienced this, like we want this, but oops, this is not like really what we wanted. And then let's try again and again, another. So this kind of rupture that, as Anri said, I think it was important. Then the other thing, another question would be even how, it was this kind of attention toward Albania even because of the political situation. And in a sense, maybe we can honestly accept that it helped, that we were like invited here and there, and it's a bit sad that maybe this attention toward art is not maybe so high anymore, and there are some maybe young Albanian artists who are working there, and they are a bit like, okay, nobody is so interested anymore about what's going on there. So because, we were discussing even with Sislej this, you can accept to have like 20 British artists in the system, but not more than 3 Albanians.
But is there an ongoing dialogue between the younger artists over there and the artists that have left?
Yeah, of course it is. We have been showing in Albania often, and we go from there.
There is critique, there is writing on your work.
We have been showing there, in Albania, different exhibitions. It's not that.
But we don't go always there back just to make exhibitions. Like we separately we go there just because it's part of us. We need to go there. And when I go, I meet friends of mine, which were already before friends of mine. Some of them my age, some of them older, some of them younger. So because we're talking of the younger ones, there are a few of them which are very bright. And then there are more than a few, but then which are less bright in terms of art. The problem is that it's very difficult to live in Albania and to embrace art fully, because the reality is very. I think there is something which happened after the 90s, which was great in terms of opening and freedom, but it also destroyed something. Like the society became very cynical and very attached to the very 2, 3, 4 new values, which are not so exciting from my point of view. And these people feel this. So, but they have to deal with it every day. I don't have to deal with it every day. I have to deal with it today because we are talking about it. So that's one thing. And the other thing, but this is more like Albanian critic I have, is that many of them, not the best ones, but many of them, they start to learn very well how to build projects, but it's not anymore so organic, because it's interesting how it also follows the trends of the whole society, which now is about applying for a project, which is about, I don't know, like writing a page and fax it to a foundation for a project, or fax it to have a camera, which is great, but I think there is some organic parts which is missing in all of this.
Sislej, you seem to very dislike the question, or the question of nationality is something that you...
No, it's a very interesting question, and I think it's a big debate, and we are here for sharing experience. Well, I can tell you one thing. I personally think that individual quality should take attention. Now, countries in Albania, or countries Kosovo, countries Afghanistan, countries other countries, we have to understand one thing, that the people, the reality is more stronger than art. Now, if you go to the reality living there, you can understand what does it mean to struggle, to survive, to exist. To raise, or let's say, to highlight the quality of individuals in that society, you need to live in that customs. Now, Albania have incredible good artists. I'm not talking because we are here, and I don't want to talk about this internationally. But what we are missing, I think, we are missing attention from so-called critics, or maybe so-called curators, or maybe so-called the people maybe as you, to go there, or maybe not only there, to go in other countries, to investigate into the social context that you can maybe highlight some individual, but not only one. Cannot be Iran only Shirin Ashad. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous. Let's think about that, how Iran have incredible quality of the individuals in society today. Think about the neorealism of today of the film of Iranian filmmakers. Now, how can we deal with that? How can Germany, with all respect of Germans, have 30 great artists? How can this happen? It's great to have. But are we talking about factory? IKEA production? So that is something that we have to clarify. It is because of economic development into the rich society that can have opportunity to raise this kind of quality for individuals, and that's great. And of course, Albania does not have a potential that we cannot underestimate. And therefore, I personally choose to live outside because I think to live today in the country where I live, in the city where I live, it's something that I can learn from the city. And of course, to question the society where I live, it is very important to experience what I take from the context where I live. So that is why I choose to go there. But of course, I have personally my experience that I don't want to abuse it. I don't want to call myself going there and calling where I choose New York because everybody is equal and so called, because they are a new culture, it's a new country. And it's not like Europe can't possess something that I'm France, or I'm Italian, or I am German, or I'm Holland, or I'm Dutch. What does mean this? So that is a question that we have to maybe debate, shifting and how identity can maybe define economy because through economic development. And that is because of, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but still, I mean, there are some, for example, now in Kosovo, in Peja, they have this very, very good space, doing very good exhibitions run by Erzen Şolol, which is an artist and curator. And again, in Kosovo, this Yakut Ferre is a young artist. It's a very good one, and in Albania there are some more things. It's not, there are some.
Yeah. What? It's just, has everyone turned off the telephones? But this whole, you said that Albanian artists are not getting enough attention. I mean, but the attention lately in the last years on Albanian artists as being Albanian artists. I mean, how do you deal with that?
You cannot uniformize in society and telling that it's because of stereotype. You have to understand that in Albania today, or in Kosovo today, or in Macedonia today, to really, because example, I can just tell you as an example. I don't want to mention the name. There was an exhibition who I really do respect the curator, and it was exhibition in regards to the Balkans. To me, it was fine. It was great that he was questioning the quality of the people living in the Balkans and exhibition. But don't feel this kind of colonial attitude of thinking of some countries and taking as objective and bringing to the Germany, to Vienna, to France? And it's really sad. And now, how can you deal with this quality of these different societies where they live, and you can call it maybe one quality of Serbia. So you cannot uniformize all Serbs, all Albanians, all Macedonians. So I personally think the quality of the individuals in any society, at least till today, to me, prove it's because of economic development. But I can assure you one thing, that in that countries, it's this enormous energy that we don't give a space because we don't know, or maybe we are not conscious. But I tell you, at least from my experience when I passed through some society that I lived for a short time, I discovered incredible energy from the people. They're like a sponge just to explore things to do. Great things. Not folkloric, but something to challenge our view, our quality of living of today. Not rational behavior, the way we learn till today that critics are made because of rational. So this is function because of this. We have to be open through the instinctive philosophy, through instinctive action, that we don't need to rationalize anymore. It's just that. Do you understand? That is, I think, that is the way I believe. And there's enormous energy, it's enormous potential. But of course, it's really now is so difficult to define like this, but I truly believe.
There is still though the very Arnavut identity that it's very strong, the Albanian identity, and it's whenever there is a character description of very Arnavut, like very Albanian. So how much would you say individually, just genuinely, rather than outside the politics, art dynamic, would you describe yourself still very Arnavut? Very simple question. And the second one is, since Adrian Paci, tonight we're doing, the public program is more not about the Albanian identity or the art that is coming from Albania or going to Albania. How would you as artists, Sislej and Anri, critically or engage with Adrian's work or your response to his work? So that would be maybe an interesting departure point, so we highlight the artist of the exhibition and see your response in relation to his content that he deals with.
Well, if I start from the second person, and I think the themes, what he questioned, Adrian, we universally share. That is because of the immigrants, I believe, from Albania. It is immigrants from Vietnam. It's immigrants to Germany from Turkey. And it's immigrants from Cuba. It's immigrants from Africa. That I believe. And this is what Adrian, through his personal experience, I think it's a remarkable poetic approach, and I really like. I can tell you very well. And but when I see his work, I don't want to be taken emotionally. I want to take something that I feel without any more response why. And I truly believe that the work, when I see, I don't want to see the context where they come from. I don't want to see the work. Now, that is the quality of the person. And today, if you ask me, I told you I come from Utrecht. I did a self-portrait. I worked 3 years in self-portrait. That example will tell you who I am. And it is live watermelon. That you can order my head coming from Israel if you want, or come from Egypt, or come from Brazil. Every time change the kilos, my weight. But that was because I feel as a watermelon, so I come from everywhere. But again, my personal experience when I'm born, I want to conserve that. But my experience I want to share. And I don't want to abuse or to create any stereotype on top of it. That is my definitely gap.
Answering your first question, I think the question is, I don't feel Arnaut because Arnaut is a historical word related, which means Albanian, but which is related to a period that I didn't live, and I think for me it's very important the time that I've been living, and Albania as a living experience that I've had, which is not Albania, which is Tirana, which is Paci and some other people. So this is it. So that's why I felt, for me, is the experience is not the past history which I've been reading in the books.
And if you have to respond to his work, to Adrian's work, in terms of
I very much agree with what Sislej said at the end is that I appreciate his works, especially when I see them out of the context. And for me, it's easy as well to see them out of the context, because I don't have to spend time in seeing them in the context, knowing the context. You know.
And Adrian, there seemed to be also a development in your work that it's more metaphorical, painterly qualities, but you also sometimes shift to a more documentary style. It seems like you're playing with reality in a way, and I read somewhere that you recently were also very interested in Pasolini and the poetics of the real. Could you elaborate on that, how you play with that notion of reality?
Yeah, of course it could be a kind of development, but it's not something that I'm like programming to do from one step to another. I started with these videos with Albanian stories, you know, in a very kind of documentary style, and then turn on what you are showing here, it's something different. But then after turn on, I did Claudie, that is upstairs, you know, which is again, you know, this guy telling his own personal story. And pilgrimage is something else. Yes, somehow I like this idea of using video not only in the documentary, or somehow without using narrative, without having text, you know, but just working with the image, like more abstract, like in the case of Turn On. But it's not that I'm like going from that kind of style in another. I mean, from the documentary or narrative to more abstract or pictorial or how to call it, way making video, because time by time I like, you know, to react in front of stories or in front of experiences or in front of whatever my ideas, you know, to react in a free way without thinking that what kind of style I'm using to deal with them. So it is a kind of development.
I was referring not as much as to your different style as to you referring also to Pasolini and the way he played with reality in his films, and he also just made a series of paintings about that. So.
Yeah. Well, I did some work based on Pasolini's film, but I used painting in that case. You know, I did some paintings according to Pasolini, and for me it was interesting to discover this, how to call, pictorial quality of his films. Just stopping the frames and painting the frames and creating this kind of storyboards of painting starting from this film. But of course, I like, how the way Pasolini deals with the reality, with this poetic dimension and, you know, kind of spiritual dimension, and mixing it with the kind of very social engagement. Yeah, so but you know, in the case of Pasolini, I choose painting, you know, to relate it to that movement.
Does anyone I have one very corny question. But I'm going to ask it now. Do you feel, all three of you, that you have a responsibility as an artist in society?
Well, it's a crucial role of artists having social responsibility. about Goya. How can we imagine the societies without people who highlight the difficulties and ambiguities in society? And therefore, I think it is very important to be crucial to be social responsibility, but again, question attitudes of estimates rather than being passive. And therefore, being part of any society, it's a backbone of any system, of any society. Therefore, it's very important the role of artists. And you cannot be indifferent to things that can surround you, because you're not a robot. A person has feelings, but you share feelings and sympathy. And therefore, that what you receive is something that you want to materialize that. Therefore, we choose art, we choose poetry, we choose some of the other languages that you can express yourself. And it's crucial.
I have a very short answer. Yes.
I have a short one, but a longer one. I think I can answer it by yes or no, because I think, yes, I believe that I'm responsible, but in terms of questioning the society, I don't want to be responsible for representing the society. So that's why I don't have a... So it's kind of yes and no. Or yes and no.
Anyone? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you for coming.